We're ready whenever you are.
Okay.
Just wants to know if I'm related to Molly Freed at ILFI. No, but we've made that joke a million times. We probably are. I mean, you know, we're probably cousins somewhere, but not that we could figure out.
All right, let's go ahead and get this started, folks. Appreciate everyone coming to the conference and making it through to the end of the day here, the capstone. I am thrilled to be able to represent on behalf of Southern California Edison, to have the honor of introducing one of my very favorite people in the green building world, Eric Corey Freed. With SCE's mission of providing safe, reliable, affordable, and clean electricity to the 15 million people living in our service territory, we have committed to carbon neutral, clean energy future as outlined in our Pathway 2045 white paper, which you can download from our exhibitor booth if you come by and visit it in a little bit. It includes the following key targets that we're hoping to achieve within that time frame. Firstly, powering 100% of retail sales with carbon-free electricity, 75% of light-duty vehicles, 2/3 of medium-duty vehicles, and 1/3 of heavy-duty vehicles will need to be electric by 2045. And in buildings, 3/4 of space and water heating needs will need to be electric by 2045. So robust, coordinated, and targeted policies are needed to clean the power supply, build, operate, and maintain a reliable and resilient grid, and move customers to adopt new technologies and programs, especially if we're supposed to do so equitably. And to that point, I especially appreciate the comments earlier by Denise Fairchild on ways to engage our communities on how best to proceed with a decarbonization policy that benefits all stakeholders. Now, to achieve these bold goals will require significant innovation, and fortunately, innovation is going to be the focus of Eric's talk today. Eric Corey Freed is an award-winning architect, author, and global speaker, and as Senior Vice President of Sustainability for Canon Design, he leads the healthcare, education, and commercial teams toward higher performing buildings for over 15 million square feet a year. Eric is the author of 11 books, including Green Building for Dummies. He holds a prestigious lead fellow from the U.S. Green Building Council as well. Eric is a longtime MGBCE member and close friend of the chapter. In fact, this is his 13th year that he's closed out the day at MGBCE with a humorous, thought-provoking, and inspiring talk. We are so thrilled to continue that tradition despite this virtual environment. And so without further ado, Eric, take it away.
Wow, thank you, Dave, for that beautiful, lovely intro. Let me share my thing. Can you all see my screen? Yes? I assume Farah will tell me otherwise. So yes, I'm sorry that we can't all be together. I mean, I'm not really sorry because, you know, you'll probably infect me, but so I'm sorry that we can't be together under better circumstances. As you heard, I'm a longtime fan of USGBC LA. Normally this would be a fun, lecture, and I'd hear you laugh, but you're all probably on mute. If you want to, I don't know how the team feels about this, but if you want to, I would totally encourage you to go off mute if you want to laugh, because I would really love to hear the laughter, to be honest with you. But since most of you probably won't do that because you're, you know, multitasking, you know, I'll just imagine it in my head. I tried doing this a couple weeks ago where I played a laugh track and it went horribly, so I'm not going to do that again. And if there's any slides that you like, you can take a screenshot of them, and then I'm happy to share them with you as well. But as you heard, this is lucky number 13, my 13th time here, my only time virtual, because obviously normally we'd be in the big room. And maybe 13 was my unlucky number, and that's why I can't be with you all today, who knows. And I really want to thank Ben and Farah and Julie for having me back every year, even though I'm sure I'll upset one of you at some point. And to thank me for doing this, they made a little video commemorating my 13th time, which I really want to show you. So here it goes. Oh, is that? I guess that was it. Okay, that was the video. I'm in Portland, Oregon right now, and it's a bit of a crazy time to be in Portland, but hopefully not everything you hear is true. As you heard, I'm Director of Sustainability for Canon Design. Canon's a top 15 firm. We were voted by Fast Company as one of the 50 most innovative companies 2 years in a row. And we work on all types of projects. We have offices mostly across North America, but also all over the world. And I oversee projects across all of them, across all the teams, healthcare, commercial, you know, and work with a lot of people in a lot of cities, and it's a lot of fun. And really, we're just trying to green up the buildings beyond everybody's comfort zone. Really, is kind of my job. So what I'm trying to say is kind of a big deal. If you didn't get that from the intro, this is a weird time to be an architect, to be sure. But it's also a weirder time when you're in the innovation business, because quite frankly, I don't know about you, but I am so disappointed in the lack of innovation that's been going on. We're faced with, you know, a challenge that we've never seen before. And really the biggest innovation people have come up with is printing their faces on top of masks, which is a little weird to me. I don't know why, you know, who knows why we're not innovating as much as we could. There could be a number of reasons why we're not innovating, and we don't have any leadership towards innovation, but who knows why. But really, how do you move forward from this? And so I don't know about you and how you've been entertaining yourself for the last 6 months, but for me, I've been like looking for, you know, I'm normally on a plane every week, and I haven't flown since March 13th. And so I'm a little stir crazy, and my wife's getting a little sick of me. And I started creating all these new hobbies. Like I print these out on my little inkjet printer, and I stick them in public restrooms just because I like to hear a bunch of men start screaming at the paper towel dispensers. If you want the graphic, I'll send it to you. You're welcome to it. It's one way to amuse yourself. I also started a podcast, which I swore I'd never do, but my friend Eve talked me into it, and we've been having conversations with fun people, and then recording it, and then sharing it. And if you want to check that out, it's Care by Design. I also started writing another book, because what else am I going to do? I can't get on a plane anywhere. So my next book's on the circular economy, and the dummies people kind of pestered me into doing it. So I'm co-writing it with a friend of mine. And also, I think the circular economy is the next big thing in sustainability, to be honest with you. Really changing that paradigm shift from take, make, waste into something bigger. What else did I do? I also, I applied to be an astronaut just for fun, just to see if that would work. They rejected me, but you probably already knew that. Okay, so what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about innovation, but innovation is a change management strategy for sustainability. And I feel that the biggest block to innovation is actually conventional wisdom. This kind of idea that the old way of doing things is somehow the right way, and we keep sticking to it. And I call that idea of conventional wisdom blocking innovation. I call it wisdom, because I don't know what else to call it. It's just this idea that we just keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Another way of looking at it is how mindless mindsets are destroying your business. That's another way to kind of think about it. But really what I've discovered is that the way we think about creativity and brainstorming and innovation and change management is all somewhat wrong. Listen, this country's full of, full history of innovation. There are plenty of companies that were often thought of as really being cutting edge, bleeding edge, the most innovative of their class at the time. And then at one point they just stopped innovating. And as soon as they stopped innovating, they died. When I was growing up, I never would have imagined Kodak would be out of the photography business, but they are. And that's a little bizarre. It's a little sad too. In fact, my entire childhood is riddled with relics of once innovative companies that failed to innovate, and then and they just kind of went away. And now we're facing this global pandemic, this kind of reckoning. We're looking at ourselves in the mirror and getting a good look at our inner demons. And at that time that we should be really redesigning everything, we're not. I mean, can you think of a better time to rethink transportation and hospitals and schools and housing and affordability and equity now, when we're all stuck at home watching Netflix anyway? Like, what a great time to do this. And these are the conversations we're engaging our clients in. But I'm frankly surprised that people aren't innovating more. I'll give you an example. I love salad bars, right? Who doesn't love a good salad bar? And the salad bar restaurant next to me went out of business. They just gave up, and they did it early too, like March. They just kind of threw in the towel. They said, well, people can't touch stuff, so I guess we're not in business anymore. And they just gave up. And I thought, well, really? Like, there's no technology that could fix this? You're telling me that you can't modify like a soap dispenser just to put the potato salad right in my hand? Like, you can't make that happen? It seems like you'd be down for a week and you could be back up in business and have a touchless, I don't know. Anyway, I'm ranting now. But anyway, this is what we've been doing as a firm. We've been innovating. We've been like realizing this is our opportunity to implement some things that we've been thinking about for a while, and now we get to do. So at Canon, we've been rethinking healthcare, rethinking education. We even implemented our own internal DEI blueprint. And by the way, you're the first to kind of see this graphic outside of Canon, and really going all in on this. And kudos really to my CEO and our core team for really committing to this in a really impressive way. But if you think about it, the history of architecture is a history of innovation. Whatever the latest technology is at the time, we're innovating constantly, right? The ancient Egyptians took stacked stones, turned them into pyramids, and we still don't quite know how they did it, by the way, and made these beautiful, beautiful monuments that still stand 5,000 years later. The ancient Greeks took their temples, which were originally built out of wood, and when those caught fire and burned down, they innovated and started using a new technology of stacking marble in discs and then polishing it and creating temples, which still mostly stand to this day. And then this push for innovation keeps continuing. Through the Gothic times, we had Gothic arches and buttresses and flying buttresses, and then Byzantine bubbles upon bubbles, and then finally crystal cathedrals, and those led to skyscrapers. And each one was an innovation and a push in a form of technology, but really a way to think in a new direction. And then that led to a plasticity movement, which still really continues for the last 50 years now. And we've had amazing innovations in fabrication, to be sure, but not so much in sustainability, not so much in materiality. Really, the most exciting things to me in materiality have been, you know, the transparency movement of the last 5 years that mostly has been pushed by USGBC more than anything. So what I think is happening is I think that we're brainstorming the wrong way. I think we're working in teams the wrong way. And frankly, I think we're delivering our projects in the wrong way. And proof of that is this. How many of you go to meetings and you dread meetings? And you're there like, when can I get out of here? And you're only there because of some sense of duty, really. And the meeting is not the place that you do ideas. You leave the meeting and then go do ideas. And so we're facilitating these conversations in the wrong way. Now, that's not to say that all conventional wisdom is bad. But there's lots of good conventional wisdom, I guess, right? There's, you know, don't eat an hour after you, don't swim an hour after you eat, right? Never eat an egg salad sandwich from a truck stop. That's, you know, good conventional wisdom. There's always get a receipt from your escort. Like there's good conventional wisdom that, okay, you should stick to. But there's plenty of conventional wisdom in architecture that's horrible, right? Do you know why everybody's cold in their offices all the time, back when you went to offices? It's because it was designed for 6 foot tall white dudes in the 50s. And so everybody else is freezing. Do you know why your cabinets are too high? Because some Swedish lady who was 6'2" set the height for that. And do you know why your paper toilet roll is so far from your toilet? I don't know. That I don't know. I think they're just messing with us now. But this conventional wisdom creeps into buildings, and it's throughout everything we do. How many times have you been in a project where it's just assumed you're going to use drywall and steel stud and air conditioning and asphalt parking lots, and you never even raise the specter of trying something else? That's part of the problem. And because of that, we have buildings that are utter failures across the board in terms of energy, health, water, waste, resources, and especially cost. Buildings are still out of reach for the majority of humans on the planet, really. And so given all of that, isn't that really just because we keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results? And so I really see my role as a sustainability director at a firm, I really see my role as being in the innovation business. I'm leading Canon and our clients through an innovation strategy. I don't tell them that, but that's really what I'm doing. Because I need to get through their thick blockhead skulls that we need to look at things in a different way, because the way we've been doing things doesn't work. I'm not trying to get back to the old way of doing things, the old normal. The old normal sucks. I'm trying to help us redefine what the new normal should be. The old normal only worked for a handful of people, really. I mean, think about it. This is not a good interface. This is an interface that screams, you're never going to figure this out, basically. And by the way, half of these are three-way switches, so it's even more confusing. And we do things on autopilot all the time because of conventional wisdom, and we don't even think about it anymore. And as a result, we've stopped kind of seeing and questioning, and then we've gotten sloppy in our work and what we do. And now we started doing things just because we think we're supposed to, and we're kind of missing the whole point. You know, orange has already come in a package. I don't need your help here. And buildings are full of these stupid bits of conventional wisdom that nobody even sees anymore. You could argue that all of my talks have really been pointing out the absurdity of what we do in our buildings, really. I saw this the other day at a building, and I was just like, just the metaphysical thought of, well, why are they in quotes? Are they not really stairs? Do they not really take you anywhere? And then once you start seeing quotes, you start seeing them everywhere. They put quotes around everything. And then this one I was really upset about. And then I realized, well, you know, he is kind of sleeping. So it's not really a security guard, really. So it gives you pause to think, what are the things that we're doing that we think are a good idea at the time, but really are just conventional wisdom, just our fear telling us we should be doing this, but they don't really help anybody. It doesn't really provide any clarity. This is, by the way, in Portland. Anyway. So that's a large part of what I do, is I'm engaging everybody in an innovation strategy. One of the first questions I ask is, what are your assumptions for the building? And they go, well, I don't know, metal stud, VAV double duct system, concrete foundation, on and on and on. And that's where I start from of, well, let's question those. Because otherwise it's just going to lead to a big dumb box that probably isn't going to perform too well. I'm really pitching sustainability as an opportunity here. And again, not to go back to the old normal, but to redefine what the new normal should be. We're working on healthcare projects now where our clients don't even know if their buildings are going to be obsolete in just 3 years. And so we're engaging in conversations now that we didn't even have 6 months ago. It's really kind of exciting. Take the housing industry, for example. We couldn't possibly build enough housing fast enough, quick enough, cheap enough to meet the needs for the current demand. And so isn't that screaming for a new innovative type of approach? Take resiliency. Everybody's plan for resiliency is basically just to count on luck, I think. Just hope that it passes them by. Isn't that screaming for an innovation? Isn't that screaming for a rethink, a redesign? You know, we got a lot of problems. And this is the depressing part of the talk, by the way. But we also have a lot of opportunities. We have about 1.6 million people per week added to every city, added to cities. And that number is just going to keep continuing until it's about 80% of the entire world's population is in urban centers. And we need to build a lot for them. We need to build about 92 billion square meters over the next 15 years. So do we build it the old way, which already gave us bad results that we already know doesn't work? Or do we look for something new? Do we look for something innovative? At the same time this is happening, the United Nations reminds us that we probably only have about 60 harvests left until soil degradation really starts to affect global food supply. And that's going to trigger a rash of climate refugees. The UN says it's about 200 million climate refugees by 2050. And by refugees, I don't mean like the refugees you see on the news. I mean like people from Florida, right? Escaping. Our neighbors, our family, our friends, people that look like you and me, those are the climate refugees of the future. And to give you a sense of scale, 200 million is about the size of the world's population during the Roman Empire. So it's a lot of people. And at the same time, carbon levels are just shooting through the roof. This is my computer fetching the latest numbers. This week, it's 412 parts per million. The red line is where we're supposed to be. And half of that was emitted just in the last 30 years. So we know better. The last time carbon levels were this high, the South Pole was covered in trees, by the way. We just finished a decade. And I know some of you, you made your little mixtapes of your best songs of the decade, and then you made your list of the best movies of the decade. I like to make my best climate disasters of the decade. That's kind of how I amuse myself. And so I want to share with you some of my hits from the last 10 years. First of all, the 5 hottest years on record were the last 5 years. 2020 is not even done yet, but it's already going to be one of the 5 hottest years on record. We already know that because July was so disastrous. That's just going to be something we say now. It's not going to go away. In fact, 18 of the 19 hottest years on record have all occurred in this century. In California, 4 of the 5 largest wildfires in California history happened in this decade, and now you're living through this now, which is just awful. And that record's going to be broken pretty quickly. We saw 6 Category 5 hurricanes tearing through the Atlantic region in just 4 years. And now there's 2 at the same time barreling their way to the Gulf Coast. At the same time, Arctic sea ice hit an all-time low, losing about 13% over just that decade. And all of our 100-year floods are now 5-year floods. That doesn't mean that every 100 years we get a flood. That means in any year there's a 1% chance of a flood happening. Now it's a 20% chance. At the same time, there were more than $100 billion or higher climate disasters in that decade, and that's double from what it was the decade before. And in that same decade, we released a whopping 40.5 billion tons of CO2 just pumped into the atmosphere, despite everything that we know and everything that we've studied and everything that we've talked about in all the years before. We're actually getting worse. And so we're well on track to go well above 3.2 degrees centigrade of warming. And by the way, anything above 2.5 is basically way of life totally different from what you're experiencing now. In fact, if we just keep doing what we're doing, we're on track to a radically, I don't want to freak people out, but a radically different world. And part of the trouble was climate scientists. They were all trying to be hopeful. They're wonderful optimists, climate scientists. And so all their projections assumed that people would get the message and do something about it, but they didn't. And so this idea that suddenly we're going to hope for people to do the right thing, I'm kind of over that now. I don't know about you, but I'm kind of done with that idea. I'm still hopeful, but just in a different, like the idea that we're just suddenly going to magically become good people. I don't think that's going to happen, because I don't know if you've met people lately, but most people are just horrible, horrible people. I don't know if you've talked to people outside of sustainability, but they're pretty dreadful. And so we're not going to save the planet all as superheroes and green people. Like we're just going to have to save the planet as the horrible douchebags that we already are. I think that's really where my mind is at. And there's no time left. We blew all of our time. We have 0 years left. And so we need innovation. We need change, but change freaks people out. I've changed a lot in my life, and I'm still changing, and I hope to continue to change. And I do a lot of green things like all of you, right? I have an electric car. My house is completely 100% powered by renewable energy. I'm privileged to be able to do that. We try to eat well. I try to cut out beef. I still like, kill chickens every now and again, but otherwise, and we buy healthy organic and stuff, and I buy offsets for my travel, and we bring I do all that crap that you all do. And you know what? It's a real pain in the ass, actually. It's a really annoying, it's annoying. All those changes are annoying. I'd rather just do what everybody else does. So I get it. I get why people don't like change. I get why people freak out when I mention it. But I think when I mention change, what they're suspecting is that I'm proposing this. I think that's what they think is going to happen. I'm not sure. I'm not proposing this. I mean, you can do this if you want, but that's up to you. What I'm really proposing is just being smarter about how we do things. I don't buy the argument that people are afraid of climate change or don't believe in climate change. I hate when I hear that. I think everybody believes in it. I just think that either you're like me, you see the science and you're scared of the science, and rightfully so. Or you see the science and you don't want to believe it and you're scared of the change you think it represents. I don't think there's climate deniers anymore. I think that's just an easy label that we give them. I think they're just scared of what if it gets even worse? And that's understandable. And when you start to put yourself in that mindset, suddenly they don't seem so ignorant anymore as much as just cautious, really. Because our brains are not wired to innovate. We're not wired that way. Your brains are wired to protect you. Your brains are basically saying, that sounds scary, that sounds different, I don't want to do that, let's get out of here. That's really what's happening. Your brains are trying to keep you alive as best they can. And so using logic and reason when your fear center is activated is not going to work. You see this all the time. All of you, you're in meetings all the time like me, and you're suggesting sustainability stuff, right? Well, now I've developed this ear for what I call these shutdown phrases, these phrases that basically try to clamp down on innovation. And I want to share with you some of my favorites. I mapped out about 50 of them, but I'm just going to give you a handful here. And these are phrases that come up at meetings all the time. And as soon as I hear it, I jump on them, because what they're trying to do really is their fear center is trying to shut down innovation. So if they mention that, well, what is the industry standard? Or, well, we tried that before and it didn't work. Or they blame someone else and say something like, well, the legal team won't let us do that. Really? Have you asked them? How do you know that? Or my favorite is, well, that sounds good in theory, but that's that one. And I've got a whole bunch of comebacks ready to go for that one. And then the typical one is, well, what's the ROI? What's the payback? I need immediate payback or else I'm not going to do it. And then probably the biggest one that's used all the time, and you got to watch out for this, is, yeah, that sounds great. Let's form a committee and spend 7 months exploring it. Don't fall for these shutdown phrases. Listen for them. They're basically people saying, my brain is telling me this is scary. I don't want to do this anymore. Let's change the subject. That's really what's happening. We don't have time for this anymore. We've done this for 30 years. This is maddening. So how do you innovate in this context? How do you innovate to zero carbon, which is where we need to be, when everybody in the room, their brains are telling them to do everything but that? That's what we're facing. That's why I've engaged the firm in an innovation strategy, because that's what we need. I read this book, Allison and Zelnico, and it's called The Essence of Decision. It's a good book. It's not sustainability related. It's just about the Cuban Missile Crisis. It was just an interesting history book that I read. And they argue that when the leaders decided on a course of action, they didn't seek advice, they sought approval. And that fundamentally led to kind of the conflict that led to a harrowing 14 days, you know, the Cuban Missile Crisis. They weren't looking for the best ideas. They're looking for the ones that would make everybody feel most calm. In other words, they failed to innovate, which means that you have to choose innovation. You have to consciously choose to do it. You have to say it openly. We're going to choose to innovate. You can't like sneak it in and hope they don't notice. You have to tell them this is what we're doing. And there are companies now that are doing this. More than 130 banks with 47 trillion in assets, and this includes Deutsche Bank, Citigroup, Barclays. They've adopted new UN-backed climate policies that would shift their loan books away from fossil fuels. New York City has set ambitious climate targets, really targeting buildings because half of the climate emissions come from the built environment. Concrete has now been pinpointed as the most destructive material on Earth and pushing for new, greener, cleaner, lower zero carbon options. And now people are even suggesting that maybe concrete should just go away, which is kind of interesting because it's kind of hard to build a building without it. And now steel makers are coming up next. Steel, aluminum, concrete seem to be the big three. And this has really opened the door for mass timber, which we do a lot of here in the Pacific Northwest. And I'm pushing mass timber now on every project across the country, including we're trying to do a school in Ohio out of mass timber, and they've never done one before, but we're seeing if we can pull it off, quite frankly. And then despite whatever's going on in the political climate, renewable energy investments hit a record last year, and it'll hit another record this year, even despite of what's going on. So these people are choosing innovation anyway. That's kind of exciting. Europe's biggest emitter of carbon dioxide, RWE, they set a goal to be climate neutral by 2040, which is kind of unheard of. And the governor of the Bank of England warned that any firms that ignore the climate crisis are going to go bankrupt. And as a sign that these firms are ready to innovate, Moody's, the credit rating agency, they bought a climate data services firm, meaning that they're going to be assessing climate risk in their portfolio of how they assess all the other risks and your credit worthiness. So this is happening whether you like it or not. So it's up to you to bring it up to your clients. You can't wait to be asked anymore. I was in a meeting with a university, I won't say which one, and we were working on a new project for them. And so when we were talking about the sustainability of the building, one of their people in the meeting said, well, you know, our goal is to be, you know, 20% carbon reduction by 2020. And I said, you know, it's 2020, right? Like we're already in 2020. And they all kind of looked at each other and said, oh my God, you're right. They've been saying that for 10 years. For 10 years, they've been telling everybody they're going to reduce carbon by 2020, and now it's here. And they haven't really done anything. So they very quietly changed their website to 2025. But now we're engaging them in a conversation of, okay, what do the next 50 some odd months look like to get you there? Because that's what we need to do. It's really about perspective. There's an old famous story they tell us in architecture school. Sir Christopher Wren, the famous architect of London, he was designing the St. Paul's Cathedral, beautiful old building. You all have seen it. And he was touring the job site one day, and he was looking at, came upon 3 stonemasons that were cutting the stone for the dome, the gorgeous dome. And Sir Wren came to the first one and said, what are you doing? And the first one said, I'm cutting stone. He said, okay. And he came up to the second one. He said, hey, what are you doing? And he said, I'm earning a wage. Okay. And then he came up to the third one. He said, what about you, sir? What are you doing? And he said, me, I'm building a great cathedral. In other words, the third one got it. He got the vision. He got that he's innovative. He got that he was part of this larger picture. That's what it means that you have to essentially agree to innovate. You have to commit to doing it. You really have to go out of your way to be different, because all of the conventional wisdom basically relies on an often unspoken set of understandings that we never really talk about. So what I'm asking you to do is to start talking about them, and you'll be amazed at the change you can start to make and the enthusiasm that you'll get from everybody else who hated the old way of doing things anyway. Russell Akoff said that the level of conformity in any organization is really in inverse proportion to its creative ability. In other words, the more conventional wisdom you have, the less creative you are. So let's say you're going into a meeting and the agenda item is, we're going to improve the wheel, right? Agenda item, reinventing the wheel. Well, we can make it out of this, we make it out of that. All I'm saying is, why don't you just ask the question, well, do we even need the wheels for this? Just break that cycle of just incremental improvement into, well, let's step back and ask some bigger questions. That's what I'm asking you to do. And I know it's scary, but that's mostly what I do all day is I just ask the questions. And sometimes they're really childlike questions. Is this, do we need to do this? But it's what opens the door to innovation. And I have a bit of advice for you. The next time you're scared about innovating, the next time you're worried about trying something or bringing up an idea you think you might look stupid, just remember that somewhere at some time, somebody suggested, hey, you know what we should do? We should make a film with a tornado full of sharks. And they did, they made that. So the next time you're afraid to bring up your stupid idea, just think, well, if somebody did that, I can certainly talk to them about, you know, adding a blue button or whatever. All right. This is where normally there'd be laughter, but you can't, you're all on mute. All right. So it's not that companies don't innovate. Thank you, bless you. It's not that companies don't innovate. They innovate all the time, just not in good ways, just not in useful ways, not in ways that we want them to, and usually in pretty weird, like, you're not fooling anybody kind of ways. And every now and again, they get a hit. Every now and again, they get, ooh, that's interesting, right? By the way, I showed this, my last live talk in March 13th. I showed this slide, and afterwards, it was a room full of contractors in Wisconsin, and they all went out, and then they bought one, and then they texted me. That's my buddy, Michael. They texted me, look what we're eating. So, you know, don't get any ideas. All right. So let's say you're sustainability director of your company. What do you do? Do you set a bunch of flaming hoops and procedures and requirements and checklists to force everybody to go through, which none of them want to do? Or do you instill in them this big vision of innovation? That was what I saw as the choice at Canon. We had a lot of systems in place, but nobody was excited about them. Now we're getting excited because now I got the board and the CEO to commit that we as a firm are going to target net zero energy on every single project. We're going to cut embodied carbon in half on every single project. We're going to do a healthy material strategy on every single project and do a resiliency strategy on every single project. Period. And by getting them to say it, I mean getting them to adopt it and vote on it and publicly announce it firm-wide. Just because I wanted it said out loud. I wanted everybody to know this is what we're doing now. Because the way I see it, most firms look at sustainability as this other thing, this thing on the outside. And if you look at most firms, and I've got friends, you know, many of you on the call that work at these firms, and they're great firms doing beautiful work. I don't want to diminish that at all. But what I'm saying is, for most of them, sustainability is a page on their website, and they're really taking the stance of, well, if the client asks for it, we'll do it. And that's what I wanted to avoid. Because I didn't want to wait to be asked to do a LEED silver project. Who wants to do that? I want to go and say, have you thought about net zero? Have you thought about mass timber? Have you thought about resiliency? Have you thought about passive house? That's exciting. That's interesting. And goes beyond obligation to something else. And it changes that conventional wisdom, that old way of thinking that gets the old results. And it gets us thinking. And I don't know if you realize this, but you were in the thinking business. Thinking is our deliverable. I mean, drawings too, but thinking's also our big deliverable. And it's hard. Because sustainability is confusing. You know, you go to the store, cashier says paper or plastic, and you're like, well, plastic is made of oil and that's bad, but it's reusable and isn't that good? And paper comes from trees and isn't that bad or is that good? I don't even know anymore. And then some of you are like, no, neither. You got to bring your own bag, but that bag's made of something. And sustainability is full of this crap. I was eating an apple the other day, and then my brother-in-law, we were video chatting, and he said, oh, you can't eat the skin because the skin, that's where all the pesticides are in the skin. And then my other brother-in-law said, no, you need the fiber in the skin. Without the skin, you get no fiber. So now I don't know what to do. I threw the apple away. That's where my head, you know, it's already, life's confusing enough. I don't need more confusing. And don't even get me started on almond milk, which I really like. And I'm, you know, Jewish and lactose intolerant. So I really have no other choice. And everybody's scolding me for it. I get it. but you're not helping. We're muddying the waters here. Everything that my parents told me were good for me actually was bad for me, right? Everything growing up we were told was good for us is actually like red meat, milk, college. All of those things are bad for us. They were supposed to be good for us. And because of this muddiness, this is why we were able to ban straws, but not assault weapons. You see what I'm saying? We're bad at messaging is I guess my point. The other day, one of you who's on the call, I won't mention your name, but on Facebook, you were posting a thing that we should ban balloons. Again, I'm not going to point out who it is, but you know who you are. That we should ban balloons because they go into the ocean, they hurt wildlife. And I thought, I'm not touching that with a 10-foot. Like, I don't want to be the guy to ban balloons. Like, it's the one happy thing I have in my life anymore. And I don't want to do that. So part of the problem is we have these biases. We have these kind of ways of thinking. And sometimes they're okay, right? They help us make decisions faster. But a lot of times they're holding us back from innovation. And you might have biases you don't even know you have. In fact, I could show you things and you'll start to see a pattern in things that is not the pattern that I intend. But because your brain is biased and a little twisted, you'll start to see these patterns. So for example, the first word, who wants to unscramble the first word for me? Does anybody know what it is? Nobody? Nobody's brave enough?
Snipe.
Am I still in the air, by the way? All right, I'll give it to you. It's spine. Of course it's spine. What'd you think it was? What about the second one? Does anybody know what the second one is? Nobody? All right, subtext. What else did you think? These are your biases. These are your, I'm not perverted, you're perverted. I gave you pretty clean words, I think. And your brain is able to comprehend these patterns in very interesting ways. It's really a sign of intelligence if you think about it, right? The fact that you can read this and know what it says, even though it's really gobbledygook, it's a type of bias. But these biases are holding us back. So what I'm saying is that it's messy, it's imperfect. I get it. How am I doing on time? And so it's not about the ideas, it's about really making these ideas happen. And so I'm wrapping up now, but basically, in order to innovate, it needs a couple things from you. First of all, you need better communication, faster feedback loops, and really instill a vision in the team to get them excited. And then the staff needs time and room to make the innovation, and you need to reward it. Nobody should feel like they're being scolded for being innovative, which often happens. Because green is messy, green is weird. I get it. So we're not selling clients on green. I'm selling them on outcome. That's the important part. And these are the outcomes that we generally start with. These are the 10 that I use with clients. So again, I'm not mentioning lead. I'm not mentioning well. Those are our tools that we use. I'm selling them on, do you want to see higher productivity in your workers? Do you want to see a boost in test scores among your students? And then from that, I'm able to then really figure out what are their priorities and really establish a clear pathway to get there. So I'm building in these outcomes at the start, and then we're not getting value engineered out. And then lastly, this is my last slide, the way I'm doing that is I'm inviting in new stakeholders and taking charge of that agenda. I'm really setting a big vision for what it is. And by big, I mean moonshot big. I'm pushing back on whatever program they give me. So if they come in saying, we want LEED Silver, I go, why? What are you getting out of it? Wouldn't net zero energy really fit more of your goals? Or LEED Platinum, really? And let's talk about that. And then I'm empowering the team to do this and giving them permission and instruction that you need to push. Everybody needs to push everybody else. And then we do it all along. You can't just do it at the kickoff and forget about it. You got to make it a habit and keep doing it throughout every phase of the project, all the way through construction. All right, I think I'm 5 minutes over, which I apologize for. If you want to copy the slides, you can text the word green to that number. That's not my phone number, by the way, so don't send me weird photos. That's just an automated service that I use. So you can text the word green to that number, and you'll get an automated response, and then I'll send you the slides. That's how that works. Or if you don't have a phone for whatever reason, you can always email me or tweet at me there. Otherwise, I think that's my time. Yeah. And I don't know if we're allowed to have questions or not, but thank you all. Again, sorry I can't see you all in person and hug you, but at least we have this time together. Okay.
Are you shit?
Oh, thank you. Wow.
You have to see the #1 song in America.
Very good.
So,
Here, I'll put the.
I just started. started that, you guys. Did you see that little innovation?
Oh, here, clapping.
Well,
I'll put the number in the chat, by the way. So you can all
yeah, there's more to come for that.